What I'm going to do now is try and tie all of this function information together into one very large and concrete example. I'm going to write a function called yesno, and that function is going to take parameters on the command line. It's going to return an exit status. It's going to be a useful and meaningful function with reasonably sophisticated processing inside. It's going to be fully commented, and it's actually going to be placed into what I might call a function library and included into another shell script. So we'll tie all of that together now in this one module. So let's have a look at the specification for this yesno function. I want a function that will do the following. Its parameters are going to be treated as the words of a yes-no style question to ask the user. For example, is your gender female? Or do you really wish to delete this file? Something that is a question of a yes-no style answer. Secondly, it will read an answer from the keyboard and check that the answer conforms to one of the following styles, and that is lowercase y, uppercase y, lowercase yes, or the same for n, no, anything basically that starts with a y or starts with an n. Now if they don't specify one of those answers, then it's going to essentially go back and ask the question again until they answer a yes or a no. So finally they will have hopefully answered a yes or a no. The function will return an exit status of true, or 0 of course, if they answered yes, or an exit status of 1, which we'll interpret as false if they answered no. And then you might use the function in the following way. You could simply say, if yes, no, do you really wish to quit now? And then if they answer yes to that, then the function will return true, which means the if statement will succeed, which means the exit will run. So essentially if they answer yes, then the shell script will exit. So let's have a look at that now. Here is my yes-no function, fully commented, and I've put it inside a file called func library. And I have made this file available to you all on the CD. Just look in the Chapter 8 folder. So let's have a look at the actual code. Here is the starting line of the function. There's the round brackets and the opening brace. Now obviously there's going to have to be a loop involved because we have to keep asking the question until they answer a valid answer. Now here I could have written while true. I could have put that like that because I want this to be a forever loop, because that's the style of programming that I prefer. But it's actually just equivalent to put while colon. Colon is also a Unix program, just like true, that returns an exit status of 0 always. And also it does nothing, which is very handy. Okay, so that's essentially saying while true, and then the very first thing I'm going to display on the output line is the parameters that they passed in. So the question will be the $. That will be all the words that make up the question. Now after all the words I'm going to put yes or no, and then a question mark, and then a space, and then I'm going to pause right there. I'm not going to go on to the next line. We're going to suppress the new line on the end of the echo statement, and then we're going to go and read the answer. So we'll read the answer, and the answer will be stored in yn, the yes, no. Now it may not be yes, no, they may not type anything at all. But we'll actually only store the first word of their answer in that little variable called yn, and the other variable called chunk will get the rest of their answer in case they happen to type many words of an answer. Then we think of all the different ways that they could type in yes, lowercase, uppercase, capital case, and so on. So if they did actually type one of those versions of yes, then we will return 0, which we will interpret, of course, as true. Now we essentially do the same thing for no, where we return 1. Now if they returned anything else, which is the star option for the case statement, then we'll echo out, please enter yes or no. So the question is, what should we do then? Well, the answer is we just go around the loop again. So we'll just say here, continue around the loop, even though we don't actually have to put the word continue, because what's going to happen is the very next line is the end of the loop, which will mean we'll just go right back around the loop again, and we'll go right back to here and do the echo statement again, and we'll just keep going around and around until we either get to this return or this return. So I guess you can summarize that by saying there's only two ways out of this function, and that's via that line or that line, and you can only get to that line or that line if you enter a valid response. Otherwise we loop indefinitely. And that's it. That's the whole function. Notice the use of the exit status here and here. But that's only half the picture. What I'd like to do now is actually show you how you might use the yes/no function. So what I'll do is I'll open up the other file, which is called test yes/no, and you can see that what it does is it dots the function library. So what that essentially does is it includes all the lines from the file called function library as if they were part of this file called test yes/no, which means of course that all the functions in that file called func library are available in this shell script. And this shell script of course is a very simple script. It's just a while true loop, so it just loops and loops and loops, and every time it says if they answer this particular question in a true way, then we'll exit. So what will happen is we'll continue going around this loop while the yes/no function continues to return false. Because if yes/no returns false, then we don't exit, we simply come down to here and go around the loop again. So let's test this and see if it's working. And we'll do it like this. Do you really wish to quit now? Now let's enter some garbage response. Please answer yes or no. And I just pressed enter there with no answer at all. And I could say no, I don't wish to quit. Do you really wish to quit? Yes. And it quits, which I guess is what's supposed to happen. So as I said, I'll include both of those scripts on the CD so that you can have a little play with both of them. They are both very good examples of the use of functions. Okay, so that concludes the case study. All that's left now in this chapter are the exercises.